G'day, beloveds. This is what we're making. It's a scroll work scarf slide or a ring. So it's just a really basic open framework ring. Now if you make it a ring, you want to make it short enough that it would be fairly comfortable on your finger. But it's a real basic idea, and since most of you watching this will be going into winter fairly soon, I think it'll be an appropriate thing. Now this particular one is roughly 17 millimeters in diameter. It's just a shade small for me for a ring, but you get the idea. And 17 seems to work. This is just a piece of cotton cloth that I used, but it seems to work well. Use your ring sizer if you're going to make this into a scarf slide. Use your ring sizer and just slide the material in until you get to the size where you think it holds correctly. The idea is to make a scarf slide that would also double as a ring. Now, being a bloke, I'm not sure what size diameter we would need, so I'm just going to guess. So this is 20 millimeters. I'm using 1.2 wire. So that'll be 21.2 times 3.14. So that gives me a total length of 66.56. So I call it 66.5. And we need to draw this full size because we're going to make scroll work that will fit in. So that is 66 to there. So by drawing this full size, we'll be able to calculate exactly how much wire, how many shapes we need. Now, the other thing is to figure out how wide. For a scarf slide, you should be able to do any width you wanted, but if you want to be able to use it as a ring, I would say not more than 20 millimeters long. And even that's going to be kind of funny. So we'll make it 20 anyway, just for the exercise. Now, my idea was to use heart shapes, and looks like I can use 5 shapes, and if I make the shape like this, then I can make another one that fits upside down in between them. Yeah, capiche? Then we can make another one that fits upside down here. So we'll make them roughly 12 millimeters wide. Now this is a type thing that for a ring you could stretch it a little bit, but it would be difficult to compress it. So what we want to do is make this as close to the right size as possible. If you just want a scarf slide, then you're not worried about fitting it onto your ring finger. You just have to figure the diameter and then how many shapes you need to fit in here. So for me, it's going to need 10 shapes for us to switch and change and have something that completely fills up the space with scroll work. So I would suggest making a few in copper to get the idea, to figure out the lengths that you need so you don't waste your silver. And then once you do your prototypes in copper, a few prototypes, then start on your silver. And if you make a heart shape, you're going to need to solder the point where the two lobes come together. Otherwise, when you form it, they'll all open up. As a trial, I'm going to cut a 40 millimeter piece of copper wire, and then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just bend it into a V shape. I've got a 6 millimeter mandrel. I'm going to form the end around. And I can already see that that's not going to be big enough. So 50 mil, and always measure it as you go, just in case you get it right, then you'll be able to duplicate it. So in the middle, that's a little more like it. And I'm going to use a smaller mandrel. This is a 5, my knitting needles. So we just bend these ends around. It doesn't have to be a perfect heart shape, but it's one of those shapes that's easy to use and it's easy to manipulate it for size. I think that's going to do, because we can curl the lobes down a little bit and get them so a little bit narrower. So 50 mil pieces looks like it's going to do it. I'll cut one more, and we'll do an upside down one next to it and just see. So a lot of your prototype work will really save you time once you start making the piece for real, because you don't have to experiment with precious metal. You've already done it with base metal. So that's the idea. So now I'll make my pieces in sterling, like I said, 1.2 diameter wire, and we'll make it to this exact length. And I wouldn't wear the ring. I mean, it's a bit girly for me, heart-shaped ring. But the idea is a multi-purpose piece of jewelry. Okay, I have 10 pieces of 1.2 wire, 50 millimeters long. At this point, I just stacked them together and had a look. As long as they're within a millimeter of each other, it's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. File the ends of all of them flat at this point. You can hold them in your hand. You can brace them against your bench peg. It's just to tidy up the ends so that we don't have to do anything to them once we solder the thing together. So do all of them. Now I'm going to use my flat round pliers to do my forming. And I've measured, and the larger part of the round part of the pliers is close to 5 mil, so that's going to be perfect. And I'm going to form the lobes of the heart first, and then I'm going to bend them so that they come together. And if I get my technique right, just by doing this and farming it this way, it's really going to save time. Now I'm also going to use my flat round pliers to hold it in the middle because I don't want a sharp point on the heart. I want the shape, but I want a round bottom. So you can see that that's the point already. So I'm just going to go ahead, squeeze that together until those two touch. And I'll just manipulate it a hair more so that they're both the same length. So that's what I want. And I'm not going to do anything to this other than solder these 2 points together when I have them all laid out and ready to solder. So I will basically solder everything together, form it, and then where the two come together at the end, once I solder those, then we'll make it round on a ring mandrel. Or you could make it oval if you're just using it as a slide, but for this, round. You can see I'll need one up and one down at the end so that when we form it around, they'll come together and it looks like a complete piece. So I've only needed 6 of these. My calculations were a little bit off, but I think it's going to be nice. And we can slide these up and down a bit to compensate for where we need it to be for length. So this is roughly the way it's going to have to be for me to get my total length. So put it on your charcoal block. I would suggest the edge that's unused. And I'm going to flux it all, place solder at the appropriate points on the whole thing, warm it up to dry out the flux, and then I'll solder it all in one go. However, one solder join at a time. So you just focus on the one that you're meant to be doing and then shift to the next one, even though it'll probably already have flowed. So use your pliers and your fingers to push and pull and bend things so that all of the joins touch and they lay flat on the charcoal block. So take your time and remember that the pieces actually have to touch or they won't solder.